It's 2023. Gas is impossible to buy. Healthcare, non-existent. Food, expensive. You have to tip at least 20% on everything, including takeout. Rent prices, astronomical. House pricing, just don't even think about it. This is America in 2023. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about how I view the US after living in Asia for 4 years. And I really just want to quickly say that Asia is not a monolith, but because I've lived in multiple Asian countries, I'm just going to be saying Asia just to make it easy. Now, there are a lot of pros to the US. I can't say it's the worst thing ever. I don't believe that. But after living in Asia, there are a lot of things that I had forgotten about or just didn't notice. And so I just wanted to share my opinion. So let's get started. Now, my first point I wanted to make about my life in Asia versus America is the food. Food in Asia is so much healthier by a long shot. For example, coming from Korea, there's this thing called banchan, or aka side dishes. And this consists of a lot of delicious vegetables usually. And most Korean meals come with banchan. It's included in the meal and it's unlimited. You can always ask for more. But I love that about Korea because every meal you eat, you will most likely be having vegetables alongside it. But in America, most people don't even consume vegetables. Living in Texas especially, I'm so shocked on how much fast food Americans, or Texans in this case, consume, such as burgers and pizza or even barbecue. No vegetables whatsoever. I feel like it's a big reason why a lot of Americans have a lot of health problems too. And I can't exactly blame them because we live in a society that encourages this behavior. It encourages fast food, it encourages snacking, and it encourages unhealthy snacks to be highly addictive. And we just don't see any promotion of vegetables in our daily life. I know growing up in the US as a kid, most of my meals looked like this. Not exactly appetizing at all. So sad. And most Americans don't even have the knowledge to make vegetables delicious. When Americans think of vegetables, they think of like lettuce, bland Brussels sprouts, or just like canned corn, or maybe potatoes. Nothing like I see in Asia, which consists of a lot of like kimchi and different like lotus roots and different types of green leafy vegetables. And it's all prepared in a different way that makes it really flavorful and just tasty, while also simultaneously being very healthy for you. And then compared to America, a lot of Asian countries celebrate vegetables. Kids really love them too. But it's so sad to see because people in America are just literally living what they know best. And because they're only exposed to those unhealthy, highly processed, highly addictive foods, they just don't even know what's good for them. And it causes a society that makes us really unhealthy and really sick. But this actually leads to my next point, which is health. In America, about 40% of Americans are obese because whether if you're obese or skinny, you can still be very unhealthy. There are skinny people who are metabolically unhealthy. The system is designed for this regardless. And so therefore, people who are overweight or obese, I can't exactly blame them for being in the situation that they're in because they're living in a system that again promotes these bad for you foods and makes it really hard to know what healthier choices there are. Not only that, when I was living in Korea, it was very common to see Korean grandmas, ajishis, and ajumas hiking up, scaling large mountains, being better than I am, better than most young people that are trying to scale these mountains too, and they're just beasting through it. Because, again, having access to movement is something that a lot of Asian countries have. That walkability and public transit and bikeability. Whereas in America, we are very car-centric and therefore it's really hard to get your body moving. So again, I totally understand why we have higher obesity rates and why people are just metabolically unhealthy because we live in an environment that doesn't encourage movement or healthy eating and instead makes it easier to indulge in poor food choices that are made to be addictive so you can't stop eating them. Another thing too, I was really shocked coming to Texas, especially after living in Asia, because the portion sizes in Texas are huge. Like huge. Like I am not used to drinking big things of drinks and big food portions that I can barely finish. People are eating so much and not moving. It's so easy to just become sicker and sicker. And then not only that, healthcare is very expensive. And so a lot of people just don't have access to healthcare. Healthcare itself might not even be helpful because when you go to doctors, instead of adjusting or giving assistance in trying to live a healthier lifestyle, it's very easy to just push pills onto people. And so again, we're back to square one where people just don't know what to do because we're not taught anything. Now, America is built for cars. Compared to Asia like Japan or Korea, where walking is very common, I normally would walk 30,000 to 40,000 steps almost every single day living in those countries. But here in Texas, I could easily get away with only 2,000 to 3,000 steps, which is super unhealthy. But the problem is, where are we walking to? In Japan and Korea, you're walking with a purpose. You're walking to work, you're walking to school, you're walking to the store. So you're riding your bike to meet friends, you're riding your bike to work. But in America, we just don't move. So you're just not getting those steps. One thing I love about Japan especially is that the bikeability there is amazing. Everyone uses a bike. I have friends who use their bike to work, and I also love seeing the Japanese parents using their bikes to even ride with their babies and kids. Because bike riding in Japan is considered a mode of transportation. But when we think of bikes in America, we think of more of it as exercise. Same with walking. Walking is just a mode of transportation. Like I said earlier, in Korea, it's very normal for a lot of old people to scale up mountains and be really good at it. Another thing I absolutely loved about Korea too is the fact that they have a lot of exercise parks. I don't know what you would call it per se, but it's just a lot of areas spread out throughout the cities where you can kind of just go and work out. And I mostly see a lot of old people using it, but of course I'll see kids playing with it too. But I think it's just great because it keeps these old people very limber and living longer, and it's just so amazing to see. But America, like, I had never seen something like that here. Or if it exists, like, you have to drive to it, which makes no sense. So it's honestly sometimes ironic. I'm like kind of ramble a little bit here, but it's so funny when I meet with friends and I want to go biking with them, but in order to go to the bike trail, we have to drive there first. And it adds so much resistance too, because it's like, oh, I want to ride my bike, but I have to set up the bike rack, and then I have to put the bike on, and then I have to get into my car, and I have to go through traffic, and I have to drive about 30-40 minutes to the bike trail, and then I'm finally there, and then I gotta take off my bike, and then it's just like such a big headache. I can see why a lot of people don't choose to, because there's so much resistance there. Not only that, because America is built for cars, it's just also very dangerous. I bike to my gym because it's only about maybe a 6 or 7 minute bike ride, but it is a dangerous bike ride. I am dodging big trucks that usually don't see me. I have gotten hit once. I've gotten a very close call twice where I literally almost did die. And it's made me now like super hyper aware, just because cars aren't aware at all. And it's just really scary. So I can see why people choose not to ride their bikes. Next point I want to compare about America and Asia is safety. So this is a big one for me. Decent chunk of Asian countries tend to rank as some of the safest countries in the world. And I really love that. In Korea and Japan, it was very common for me to walk by myself late at night and not feel threatened. Honestly though, you always be safe and always be smart regardless. But just overall though, I consistently walk by myself at night. And one thing I did often in Japan and Korea and even Thailand is that I would, like, say if I was working at a cafe, I would leave my laptop to maybe grab a snack real quick. I would come back, my laptop would still be there. It's pretty amazing. And people do it all the time. I would leave my phone to go to the bathroom or to go out and take a walk and stretch. Come back, it's still there. No one has stolen it. And I really just miss that safety in Asian countries because people just don't steal. And you don't worry about getting robbed. However, like in America, I had to break that habit very, very quickly. I remember when I first moved back to the States, or I think I was visiting actually, I had suggested to my friends, hey, let's go out for a walk at 1 a.m. And my friends looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, why? Why would you do that? To me, I'm just like, I want to move my body because it feels good. It's nice to get outside and get some fresh air. And it's a nice way to socially interact with my friends that isn't just sitting in the house all day. But my friends quickly reminded me that it is very dangerous to do so. And so we didn't do that. But I just really miss having that safetiness in Japan and Korea and in Thailand too. Also on top of that, we do have the lack of walkability, so it is extra dangerous because of cars, not being able to see at night. But yeah, that's a big difference between Asia and the US. Another thing about Asia and the US is tipping culture and taxes. Honestly, like this was kind of making me a little bit frustrated when I first moved back because it just made things feel so much more expensive. So when I'm ordering food, for example, maybe on Uber Eats or delivery or even like in person, I'm getting this dish and I'm like, oh my God, it's $15.07. I'm thinking it will be around $15.07. I hit checkout and it's like $30 and I'm just like, what? How did this literally doubled? How? And is it just me, or has tipping gone crazy? I know I've been gone for some years, but I feel like 20% now is like the bare minimum. I've seen things go up to like 35% even, which is kind of crazy. And not only that, like they ask you to tip for literally everything, even for takeout. And sometimes they like stare at you, so I feel guilty and I tip anyway. I try not to feel too guilty because I'm just like, okay, you're just giving me a bottle of water, but still, it just feels like a jerk if you don't tip. So I tend sometimes succumb to the pressure. And yeah, I can't even tip less than 20%. And I feel so bad if I do too. And even if the service wasn't that good or non-existent, basically you still have to tip. And I will tip 20% because I feel bad, but it's a lot of money at the same time. And I understand like people surviving off of tips. And so I'm like, oh, this is their livelihood. But still, it's like, oh, it's so expensive. And I just don't know. But it's one of the reasons why I stopped eating out. I pretty rarely eat out. Or if I do, I eat out at places that doesn't require tip, that doesn't have service. But I haven't gone to like a proper restaurant in a really long time just because it's so expensive. And then there's random fees every now and then too. Like, I don't know, service fee, for example, just a bunch of fees that I've seen that just doesn't make sense. So literally like price have just gone up. And I think it's so sad to see that companies and restaurants are using the consumers basically to pay for the workers' wages. Because like, for example, in Texas, servers only get paid $2 an hour, which is kind of crazy to get paid only $2 an hour. And so literally without our tips, they cannot survive. And so it's really up to us to pay for their wages. And so companies and restaurants can continue to pocket extra money because that's cheap labor. Again, I feel like it's very unfair for the consumer, but that is the society in America we live in. But in Asia, I just love the fact that tipping doesn't exist. Honestly, in most parts of the world, tipping doesn't exist. It's a very uniquely like American, Canadian kind of thing. And then tax too. I love that in Japan and Korea, for example, tax is included in what you purchase. So for example, if you see something for $4.35, you know that it's going to be $4.35. It makes me not want to buy anything. I just like don't want to purchase stuff because there's always these additional taxes. Or I just have to keep in mind like, okay, it's going to be more expensive than I think it will be. I want to make at least one more point because honestly, I can go on forever with a lot of different points. But just another one that's really important to me is privacy. I honestly wish this was like a bigger thing that people talked about in America, but I feel like privacy is still like just not taken very seriously. But one thing I really miss about Korea is that privacy is really big there. So for example, like say if I'm filming a vlog in person in Korea, you have to blur out the faces of people in the background. And I think that's very fair because those people didn't consent to being on the video. Also, in addition, like in Japan and Korea, the cell phones have a shutter sound on. Like the shutter sound is just always on automatically. Cannot turn it off, but it's to prevent people from taking pictures of strangers in public, especially creeps. So it's there to prevent that. However, in the US, especially with TikTok, I've seen so many videos of people filming strangers without their consent. It's online, and if it goes viral, millions of people can see, and now millions of people are judging this person who didn't want to be online in the first place. And then I see comments that say like, well, it's not illegal, so why not? And I'm just like, but still, it should be common decency to not want to do that to a person who didn't consent to these things that you're forcing them out in the public. I just don't get it personally. But another thing too is like companies. Korea sued Facebook, right? And a lot of European countries too, for sharing private data to companies for profit. And just like overall, they just have better privacy laws against companies in general, which I really like. Whereas in America, like our data goes everywhere. Like those companies definitely use all of our data to try to market to us and to try to profit from us and try to like warp our minds into like buying things because that's what they do with our data. They get the information and they know what we like and they will target ads in specific things in order to sell us stuff, and we think we're immune to it but we're not. And I just feel like it's totally invasion of privacy. It just feels very weird just to know like companies have all this data about me, and even you can learn a lot about a person just from their digital footprint, and companies knowing that and taking advantage of that for their personal gains, and also can be very dangerous too. I just really miss that about Asia, where I feel like I was more protected. Yeah, I don't know if that'll ever change in the States because I feel like people aren't as aware about it. And two, I feel like companies have America in a chokehold, you know what I mean? So I feel like they make the rules and the laws and they allow it to happen, so it happens. So there's really not much we can really do, but it does frustrate me. But overall, this is how I view the US after living in Asia for 4 years. I could literally go on, but I don't want to ramble too much. And like I said, there are great things about both sides, pros and cons to a lot of Asian countries, pros and cons to a lot of America, I guess. However, my eyes have been open, like I said, since coming back, and it makes me really miss living abroad for that reason. And like I said, it's not because America's bad per se. It's just that I feel like it's a misalignment. That's the best way I could really say it. But yeah, that's basically it. So I'm curious as to what you guys think. Have you lived somewhere else? And if so, how did that change your perception of your home country? Let me know in the comments below and I would love to read them. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching and have a good rest of your night/day. Bye.